So now we will go on to our second speaker, which is Tom Carrington Smith from CharlieHR. So I've had the pleasure of knowing Tom for a few years now, and Tom heads up product at CharlieHR, which is a recruiting platform. And yes, we will hear more from Tom's story right now.
Cool. Does that work? Cool. So as James said, I'm Tom. I'm a co-founder of CharlieHR, and I'm also the chief product officer there as well, where I look after mainly product and engineering. I always think of stuff like this is worth giving context to the backgrounds of where you've come from. So completely by accident ended up in startups. I went to university and built a WordPress site that ended up being BBC Sport for students. So people went and found out their fixtures and results. And we ended up live streaming some sport through that site, sort of pre-Twitch. It was quite an interesting time. And we ended up having a couple of 100,000 students use it. And then after university, we completely fucked it up as a business and then didn't turn it into anything. After that, I joined a company called The 11 with two guys called Rob and Ben, and they were building some agencies. And I spent the 3 or 4 years helping them build a couple of agencies to about 35 people. One called Born Social, which is in this building as well. And through that experience, we learned a lot about growing companies and leading people and hiring people and onboarding people. And we were really, really bad at it. And I wanted to get back to building software. So we built this really simple onboarding flow, which let you, as soon as you hired someone, add them to a system, and it fired out an email and it collected all the details you needed to legally hire someone. And the reason we built that was because it was genuinely a case where I'd be running to like an Apple store to buy a laptop before someone started. And there was a few cases of forgetting to add people to payroll, which is possibly the worst experience of my life. And someone walks in and says they haven't been paid the day after payday. So we built this purely to help with one of the agencies we were working on. And this was in September 2015. And we showed it to a few other people that we knew, and they started using it. And the other thing we were really, really bad off was time off. So we had a few occasions we were working on client projects, and turns out 2 designers were away for the same week, and we had no designers in the room, stuff like that. So we built a time off module which let you book your time off and inform you about your holidays. And now we're, this is what we are. So this is our dashboard, as you can see here, with any Office fans. We make a lot of test accounts, so trying to make them fun is quite hard at times. So we use David Brent a lot. So about a year ago, January last year, we raised a seed round, and then since then we've it's kind of been a bit of a ride, to be honest, and we're really holding on and kind of winging it, if I'm really honest. And we've grown about 25% month on month. We now have a couple of thousand companies using us every day, tens of thousands of active users every day. It's been an interesting experience. So we're for those who don't know, any users in here actually? Does anyone use the product? There's a few. Okay, cool. So we're a free HR platform for small businesses. So onboarding your hires, managing time off in the team directory. That's kind of what we do. So what I wanted to do for 15 minutes or so is just talk about some of the lessons we've learned over the past year and some of the lessons I've learned. So I've tried to cut it down to 5 different things, and hopefully they'll tie slightly into some of the trends we're seeing within SaaS as well. And I don't really know what I'm doing, so I could be completely wrong if I'm honest, but hopefully this will help with some trends that people are focusing on. And to summarize it all, and I'm going to try and tie it in, especially with Valentine's this week, is building lovable products. Now, one of the things we didn't really mean to do at all, and it's kind of happened, is people seem to love using CharlieHR, which is kind of weird. And I think there's this profound shift happening in SaaS where people are building products now that people love using, and the expectations people have on a SaaS product is completely different from what it used to be. So I'm going to run through 5 things that we've learned, or I've learned over the past year or so, and hopefully that will help a few of you with some of the stuff that's going on. And like I said, I'm really keen not to tell people stuff and just kind of pass on experience because frankly, we're learning on this journey as well. So build a product like a consumer customer, or a customer like a consumer company, sorry. Because one of the things we did quite early on is we built Charlie for the teams. So we were really, really bad at onboarding new hires. And we looked at software in the space and we didn't use anything. And the reason we didn't use anything was mainly because we thought it was an insult to get a designer and a developer to go and spend all their day building beautiful things and then go and book their time off or update their address when they moved flat on some legacy 2.0 platform. So we tried to build a product which they liked using first. And I think this is a shift you're seeing a lot more because people are using their work laptop to watch Netflix at home, and people are using their personal mobile to do work, or their personal iPad to do work. And there's a real shift in the standard people expect of products now within the SaaS industry, and they need it to feel like Facebook and Snapchat. And that's what people expect. And we kind of by accident tried to build a product that people liked using early on, but it's really something we've seen. And the two companies we really admire are Trello and Slack. And I think Trello have tried really hard to build a brand and build a consumer product that people love. So this is Taco, which is Trello's dog. And anyone that uses Trello, like, it pops up and gives you advice and tells you new things that have happened. And you can see that it's completely stupid, but it feels like a consumer product some of the time. And I think that's a big shift that you're starting to see. The other one is Slack. I don't know if anyone's seen this, but Slack, not just on product, but also on their growth and on their brand, really focus on some really odd things, but it's essentially like a consumer product. So they have a Slack store where you can buy their socks, and you can buy their pins, and you can buy their stickers, which is completely crazy. But apparently they get a lot of traffic from this, and a lot of people that sign up after visiting or seeing this, because it gets shared quite a lot. So you see that people are trying to change the way they build products, but also how they build companies in SaaS, where they're far more focused on being a brand or being a consumer company than necessarily being a B2B company. This is something we learned really early on, and again, I mentioned it before, but really by accident, where a lot of the software in the HR space, which we're in, has been built for the individual. So it does a load for the HR manager, and it's brilliant for them. But they roll it out across their company, and nobody wants to use it. So what happens is they have all these amazing tools, but no one actually uses it to do anything. So we, slightly by accident, because we wanted to build something that the team liked using, have built a product which people kind of like using, and our engagement numbers are pretty high for a SaaS company. So what you see is, even if the tools aren't as great for the individual, if you get the team using it, it means they can actually do their job much easier anyway. So our job now, and we're launching a paid product very soon, is we're building tools for the individual, but we've done it in reverse, where we've tried to build tools for the team, and then we're going back into individuals, where I think a lot of companies, especially in the HR space, have tried to build the individual tools and then backed into the team. And if the team don't use it and you don't get buy-in from it, then the data and the functions of that software is completely defunct. We learned that quite early on, and it's become a real strategy of ours, which is, how do we make a team member like using this? How do we make them enjoy or easy to put their time off? Because we can get to the HR person further down the line, or we can get to the COO further down the line and help them a bit further. But if the team don't use it, it's kind of defunct. And I knew I was doing a talk for GoSquared, and any of those who know James, he's a massive Apple fan. So I was like, I'll win some points by chucking in a Steve Jobs quote, because the GoSquared guys are obsessed by Apple. And Steve Jobs said this like 10 years ago, when he was talking about the enterprise company. Within the enterprise market, it's not as simple. The people that use the products don't decide for themselves, and the people that make those decisions are sometimes confused. And I think you're seeing that change now a lot. And the teams inside companies are recommending software to different departments, and they're trying to get people to use their software if they like it. So we see, we have some companies that are much bigger than should be using CharlieHR, but they've recommended it into their team leads, and actually they're bypassing stuff like Workday because they want to use this to manage their time off, and actually they end up exporting that data out into the central HR system. So you see people like recommend stuff and push stuff through, and it goes back to this whole team function where the standard of your software in SaaS has to be as good as a consumer product now, because that's what people expect. And the decision is not an IT person who controls the budget making a decision. It's the team that has to buy into that. If any of you guys use Slack and you had to persuade your grumpy COO or co-founder or whoever it was to pay for it, that's happening a lot more in different SaaS industries, and it's a really interesting trend that we see. This one's a personal learning, because the reasons I've messed up over the last year is trying to be way too complicated. So I think especially in a space where you're trying to get people to use your software and adopt it, if you try and make things too complicated, it really doesn't work. The biggest mistakes we made over the last year is slightly, and this sounds like we're smart, and I don't think we are, but over-intellectualizing our thoughts around stuff. For example, our paid plan, which we tried to launch or plan much earlier, we had all these different like power-ups and turn-ons and different things and made it really complicated. And actually, as soon as we got external eyes on it, people had no idea what was going on, and it was way too complicated. I think the simpler you can make it, especially when we've got a freemium model, the better. And I think if you're ever at a stage where you're debating stuff too much, then you're probably trying to make it too complicated, because we really messed up on some few things by just overthinking stuff. And because of that, I didn't put an example slide, because I'm trying to keep it simple, right? So yeah. The fourth trend we saw, or we've seen a lot of, again, is recommendations. So really early on, in about December 2015, we had maybe 100 companies that were using CharlieHR. And a lot of them were technology companies or tech startups. And we had this big internal meeting where we were worried, because as a lot of you know, if you work at startups, there's two ways you go, basically. You go big or you die, especially if you're going to be funded. And so we were really concerned that we were like, hang on, are we just building a tool just for startups? And like maybe we should be building things like time tracking and shift work to like help with other people that work in different spaces. And this goes back a lot to what the talk before, when we talk about one use case. And actually we made the decision to double down on marketing to technology companies. The reason being is we saw the few companies outside of technology that were using us had come through recommendations from the technology sector. So what we realized was that nowadays the London tech scene is one of the noisiest industries, but also if you've got an agency, or if you've just started an accountancy practice, or if we're running a law firm, you have friends that work at technology companies, and they're the people you go to get recommended software. So what we found was we grow a lot through recommendation and word of mouth, and we fuel that by things like content. But what we found was people were recommending us to companies which weren't technology companies, but the people that were doing the recommendations were technology sector. So what you saw was like we doubled down on it slightly and saw this like rippling effect. Whereas now, I think just under 25%, less than a quarter of our active companies are actually from the tech sector. And that's but a lot of the recommendations come from that. And that was something that we were really like amazed by as we saw it kind of grow over the last year. And I always think that this is mental. I go on Slack every now and again because they're the companies that we aspire to be a bit like. And they launched their threads, and I'm always interested to see the reactions to stuff like this. And you can see people tweeting like, I love Slack. I love this threads product. And I just find it crazy. We're talking about workplace software here, and people using the word love, and that's madness, right? I think it's really interesting. And if you can get that, I think the job is to try and hold on to that. And we get it a little bit, and we're nowhere near perfect at all. But we send out hats, like bobble hats or flat hats to people. And we started getting people sending photos, either via email or via Twitter, or a few other ways of them wearing their flat caps. This guy, when I was writing this presentation about, I'd say 24 hours, but really it was about 2 hours ago, this guy sent in a tweet over the last couple of days, obviously hashtagging swag, SaaS, and startups, with his CharlieHR hat. And I think there's stuff like that I'm blown away by it when people talk about that, because we're like HR software for small businesses. I mean, why are people sending in pictures of them wearing a flat hat with our logo on? It's crazy, right? But I think if you can harness that, and we're not 100% sure where that's coming from, but if you can harness that, our job, especially within the product team, is to make sure that keeps happening. And like finally, I think this is something we've been thinking a lot about over the last year. And our previous background is running agencies, so we think a lot about brands, which is slightly different from when you think about product and engineering. And I struggle with it because it's kind of fluffy, and I'm like looking at computer code and people are talking about brand, and it's just silly. But really, we've talked a lot about it, and we really think that long term that the best brands win, not the best products. And I think this is a profound shift in SaaS, where you're going to see some companies who are going to build brands for the first time in the SaaS industry that do things that are very different from what we've seen before. And we talk about it a lot because we think the long-term value is to be able to create a brand. And I think I have some friends that have built amazing products, and they haven't quite gone on to be the companies they wanted to be. And I think if you can combine a great product with a really good brand and build that over time, then that long-term really gets you where you want to be. And we focus a lot on that. So a lot of people ask, like, why is it called Charlie? to be honest with you, it was called like Cog or Engine before, and we thought that was like really like sassy and like a classic kind of SaaS business. Not sassy as in like sassy, but so we called it Charlie. So why do we call it Charlie? And people ask that a lot. And really, we wanted to call it after a person. We wanted to be non-gender specific. We wanted it to automate a lot of admin and kind of be like a person's assistant. And we did that by accident, completely by accident, because we literally ran out of names. And we had Charlie or Sam, and we designed a S logo and didn't like it. So we went with that. And I think over time, a lot this year, we've learned about, or last year, was how can we make this into a brand and build it into a brand so that it means a little bit more than just HR software? And how can we grow that beyond just HR software? And actually, our plan is to become almost like an operating system, or as people describe to me on the phone, intranet. But actually, we mean an operating system for small businesses. And the original, when we were sketching out and building Charlie to start with, one of the inspirations is, I don't know if people here have played Football Manager. Some of you might play it. When I was a kid, I played it a lot. And we had the actual Football Manager screens printed out around the office. And we thought it was crazy that you could play a game like Football Manager. And Football Manager, for those you don't know, lets you run a football club, not just from like buying players and playing matches, but also like upgrading the stadium and all kind of crazy things. And we're like, why is it so easy to run a football club via this game? Yeah, every day I'm like I'm copying and pasting cells from my spreadsheet into payroll. Or I'm trying to work out whose birthday it is, or I have no idea what's going on around who's on the bike to work scheme or not. And so we're trying to build a software which is a bit bigger than HR and becomes almost like your operating system inside a business. And I think if we can build a brand, it will allow us to get out of that HR space, because if we stay there, then we probably won't be able to do it. And in a previous life, when I was doing live streaming sports matches, I worked really closely with Red Bull. And I often go and I have this photo that I used to have on the back of my desktop screen. And I think like the most amazing thing is you forget that Red Bull is a fizzy drink. It's an energy drink. And they've built this amazing brand, which is so much bigger than selling drinks. And they do so much other stuff now. And the brand value is huge. And I think you're going to see SaaS companies like Slack and potentially Trello and hopefully others that are going to build brands that are going to do things way outside of the SaaS space. And I think you can take a lot of inspiration from people like Red Bull in doing that. So they're sort of the 5 things that I've learned, or we thought a lot about this year. We're very much on the journey. Like I said, we're kind of 17, 18 months into having a SaaS business. And I think if you can build lovable products and focus on building a brand longer term, then you can really grow at a good pace. And those who use us, please come and find me and give me feedback, because I'm aware there's lots of things we do that needs to be improved. But hopefully that gives you some insight into where we're trying to take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. That was fantastic. We're big users of Charlie here, and we love it.